Your special person finally spoke their heart out. For months they carried a quiet storm inside their chest, a hurricane of unspoken words, hidden tears, and a longing they were too terrified to admit to the world. They wore a mask of indifference, pretending they could walk through this life without you. They learned how to smile in rooms full of people, and make it convincing enough that nobody would dare question whether something was missing from their life. They became skilled at deflection, at changing the subject, whenever conversation drifted too close to the territory of the heart, at laughing a little too loudly, whenever silence threatened to expose the ache that lived permanently beneath the surface of their carefully composed exterior. But heaven has been watching the silent battle in their soul. Heaven has seen how every road they took only made them realize how desperately they needed to return to you. And last night, something shifted in a way that neither logic nor reason can fully contain or explain. You need to understand something. Before we go any further into this message, the spiritual world operates on a completely different timeline than the human world. What we perceive as delay, as absence, as abandonment, as silence, the heavens perceive as sacred construction. When a building is being constructed, there are weeks, and sometimes months, where, from the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. The foundation is being laid deep in the earth, where human eyes cannot see it, and it is only when the structure begins to rise from the ground that the observers on the outside begin to understand that work was always happening. It was never stagnant. It was never still. It was simply operating in a dimension that required faith to perceive and patience to trust. That is exactly what has been happening in the invisible realm surrounding your connection. What looked like abandonment from where you stood was actually divine architecture. What felt like silence was actually a conversation between heaven and your person's soul, a conversation that required the noise of their life to quiet down before they could fully hear what was being said to them. And last night, finally, they heard it. Last night, the dam broke. Last night, they stood before their friends, stripped of all their pride, and confessed the truth that they had been running from for so long. They looked them in the eyes and said that, "You are the one they have been praying for, and they are finally ready to choose you." They said your name out loud in a room full of people who know them, people who have watched them struggle, people who have seen them try to convince themselves that what they feel for you is something they can outgrow, or outrun, or simply outlast. And when they said your name, something happened that was far more significant than a simple social confession. Something moved in the spiritual atmosphere. Something ancient and powerful was set into motion. A declaration was made not just to a group of friends but to the entire universe, and the universe, as it always does, began immediately to respond. You must understand the magnitude of what happened in the spiritual realm at that exact moment. For a long time, you have felt forgotten. You have cried yourself to sleep on nights when the silence from their direction was so heavy that it pressed down on your chest like a physical weight. You have stared at the ceiling in the dark and wondered whether the prayers you were sending upward were being received by anything or anyone at all. You asked the universe why the separation had to be so painful, why the silence had to be so loud, why the person who held your heart seemed so distant and cold, when everything inside you knew with a certainty that defied explanation, that this connection was real, that it was deep, and that it was not something either of you could simply decide to abandon without consequence to your soul. You wondered in those dark hours whether you had somehow misread the signs, whether what you felt was one-sided, whether the certainty you carried in your spirit was just an elaborate story you had told yourself to make sense of a love that was never going to materialize into anything real. Those thoughts came for you in the night, and you know how hard you had to fight them. But from the highest heights, the angels were orchestrating a profound shift. Every tear you cried was collected. Every prayer you whispered into the darkness was heard. Every morning you chose to get up and keep going, despite the ache in your chest, was noted by forces that operate beyond the reach of human perception. The silence was not a punishment, was never a punishment. Heaven does not punish love. Heaven refines it. The separation was a sanctuary, a sacred space where your person's soul could be broken down to its most essential truth, and then rebuilt on a foundation that was strong enough to hold the weight of what you two are meant to be together. Heaven had to allow them to experience the emptiness of a world without your light, so they could appreciate the value of your presence. Heaven had to let them wander far enough from you that the distance became a teacher, and the lesson the distance taught them was one that could not have been learned in any other classroom. They had to feel what it means to live without your warmth before they could understand why your warmth was worth every sacrifice required to return to it. Think about that for a moment, really sit with it. There are people in this world who never learn that lesson. There are people who spend their entire lives running from real love, because they are never allowed to experience the full weight of their choice to run. Heaven, in its profound wisdom and its intimate knowledge of your person's soul, determined that they needed to experience that weight, not as cruelty, but as grace, because the version of them that would have come back to you 6 months ago, or a year ago, would not have been capable of truly seeing you. They would have returned, still carrying the same walls, still half convinced that they could keep 1 foot in and 1 foot out, still operating from a place of fear rather than surrender. Heaven knew that was not the reunion you deserved. Heaven knew you deserved someone who came back with their whole heart, and nothing less. So the work had to be done. The season of breaking had to run its course. And last night, it completed itself. When they spoke those words last night, a powerful shift occurred in dimensions that most people never learn to access or acknowledge. They did not just admit their feelings to their friends, they confessed them to the entire universe, and in doing so, they activated a spiritual agreement that had been dormant, waiting for exactly this kind of intentional and courageous declaration. They admitted out loud what they had been fighting to deny for months. They admitted that every substitute they tried to put in your place failed to satisfy the hunger in their heart. Every distraction they reached for, every new connection they attempted to cultivate, every strategy they employed to convince themselves they were fine, every surface-level interaction they used to try to fill the space that only you can fill, every single one of those attempts collapsed under the weight of its own inadequacy. Nothing worked, nothing came close, and the longer they tried, the more obvious it became that what they were running from was not a feeling they could simply leave behind. It was a fundamental part of who they were. They confessed that when they close their eyes at night, your face is the only one they see. Think about what that means for someone who had been working so hard to convince themselves otherwise. Think about what it costs a person who values control and self-sufficiency, as much as your person does to sit in the presence of people they trust, and admit that they are not, in fact, in control, that the carefully constructed story they have been telling themselves has fallen apart, that the walls they built were never as solid as they made them appear. They told their inner circle that they are tired of running, tired of pretending, and tired of fighting a connection that was written in the stars, long before either of you walked this earth. They are exhausted by the performance of not caring, when caring is the only thing they have ever done. When it comes to you, they are worn out by the effort it takes to pretend that they are someone who can walk away from a love like this and emerge unaffected on the other side. They told their friends something that cracked the room open, something that landed with a weight that made everyone present understand they were witnessing a moment of genuine and rare vulnerability. They said that you are their sanctuary. They said that you are the answer to the prayers they were too afraid to voice out loud. Prayers that lived in the part of them that they rarely let anyone see. Prayers that they almost convinced themselves they had stopped praying. They said they are ready to risk everything to make things right. And when a person who has spent months fortified behind walls of pride and self-protection says they are ready to risk everything, you need to understand that they mean it in a way that goes far beyond the words themselves. Something fundamental has changed inside them. A reckoning has taken place. They have looked at the life they built without you in it, and found it empty, in a way that nothing else they tried could fill, and they have made a decision. The decision is you. This is the breakthrough you have been waiting for. Not a partial opening, not a tentative crack in the wall, a complete and irreversible breakthrough. The spiritual blocks that had been keeping this person isolated from the fullness of what they feel are crumbling. The walls of pride, fear, and outside interference that kept them running are being torn down by divine hands, and the demolition is total. There is no going back to the person they were before last night's confession. You cannot unspeak words that have been spoken in truth. You cannot unsurrender a soul that has genuinely laid down its defenses. What happened last night is permanent in the spiritual realm, and what is permanent in the spiritual realm always finds its way into the physical world. You are about to witness the fruit of your patience. The tears you sowed in sorrow are turning into a harvest of absolute joy. Heaven wants you to understand something about the nature of divine timing that most people struggle to accept, because it requires a level of trust that feels, in the middle of the waiting, almost impossible to sustain. Every single element of how this situation has unfolded, every delay, every silence, every moment where it seemed like nothing was moving, every night when you almost gave up, every morning when you had to choose faith all over again. Every one of those moments was a necessary thread in the tapestry of what is being created. Remove any one of them and the tapestry loses its integrity. The timing was not accidental. It was not arbitrary. It was not the result of celestial indifference to your pain. It was the result of a plan so intricate and so specifically designed for the unique architecture of your connection that no human mind could have engineered it. Only something with a perspective vast enough to see both the beginning and the end simultaneously could have arranged things in this exact sequence, for this exact reason. If they had come back to you earlier, they would have brought the same old wounds, the same doubts, and the same hesitation. They would have returned, carrying the unprocessed weight of everything they had not yet been forced to face about themselves, and about what they truly want, they would have stepped back into the connection, still capable of leaving again, still harboring the unexamined fears that drove them away in the first place, still convinced on some level that they could eventually find a way to be okay without you. That would not have been a reunion, it would have been a repetition. And you have suffered enough, you have waited long enough, you deserve a return that is final, that is certain, that is rooted in a clarity that has been forged through real experience and real reckoning, rather than temporary longing that fades when comfort returns. Heaven knew that, and heaven held the timeline, precisely because of it. Look at the transformation that has taken place in them through this season. Where there was once hidden feeling, there is now public declaration. Where there was once fear and hesitation controlling every move they made, there is now an unshakable certainty that no longer requires permission or ideal circumstances to express itself. Where there was once the appearance of indifference that wounded you more than they probably ever knew, there is now a willingness to be completely vulnerable in front of the people whose opinions matter most to them. Where there was once running, there is now the decision to stop, to turn around, and to walk directly toward the very thing they spent so long trying to convince themselves they did not need. Each of these shifts represents a profound internal transformation, and profound internal transformations do not happen quickly. They happen in the exact amount of time that they need to happen, and then they express themselves in a single moment that appears sudden to those watching, but has actually been building for a very long time. The ache that you felt during this separation, the longing that lived in your chest every day, and became a companion that you grew both exhausted by and strangely attached to, that ache was not wasted. Nothing you feel in connection to this person has ever been wasted. Every prayer you sent up was a seed planted in spiritual soil, and seeds do not produce their harvest on the day they are planted. They disappear into the ground. They are invisible. There is a period that looks to anyone watching like nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, in the dark where human eyes cannot reach, the work of becoming is happening constantly and completely. And then one day, with what seems like no warning at all, the first evidence of the harvest breaks through the surface and becomes visible. Last night was that moment. Last night was the first green shoot, breaking through what looked like barren ground, and it is only the beginning of what is coming to full bloom. You might be wondering right now about the practical dimension of all of this. You understand the spiritual truth, or you are beginning to. But there is a part of you that wants to know what happens next. There is a part of you that has been in the waiting for so long, that even the news of a breakthrough struggles to fully land in a heart that has had to protect itself from hope more than once. You have been careful with your hope. You have guarded it like something fragile and precious, because you know what it costs when hope gets ahead of reality, and then has to be walked back. You know the particular kind of pain that lives in disappointed expectation, and you have done everything you could to protect yourself from experiencing it again. And now something real has happened. Something confirmed in the spiritual realm, something your deepest knowing recognizes as true, and you are trying to figure out how to let yourself receive it. Here is what you need to know about what comes next. The words your person spoke last night to their inner circle are the rehearsal for the words they are preparing to speak directly to you. What happens in private confession always precedes what happens in personal declaration. When someone speaks a truth out loud for the first time, especially a truth they have been carrying for a long time, they do not say it once, and then retreat back into silence. Confession creates momentum, it creates accountability, it opens a door that cannot simply be closed again, because the act of opening it has changed the person who opened it. By speaking your name, by admitting to the people who know them best, that you are who they want, they have crossed a threshold, and having crossed it, the path that stretches out ahead of them leads, inevitably and directly to you. They are going to come to you. Not in the tentative half-committed way. They have approached things before, not with one foot ready to withdraw at the first sign of difficulty. They are coming to you with the full weight of everything they have realized, everything they have felt, everything they have been afraid to say, for longer than is comfortable for them to admit. They are coming with repentance for the times. Their fear made them cold when you needed warmth. They are coming with openness about the ways they failed to show up fully for what you two share. They are coming with arms that are no longer braced to push away, but open to receive and to offer. They are coming with a heart that has been stripped of the pride that made honesty feel too costly. And in its place is a willingness to be known, and to know you in a way that requires both of you to be fully present and fully real. The union that is approaching is not the beginning of something fragile. It is the continuation of something ancient. There is a reason that despite everything, despite the silence and the separation and the confusion and the pain, the feeling never went away. There is a reason you could not talk yourself out of it. No matter how logical the arguments in favor of moving on seemed, there is a reason your heart refused to close the door completely, even when your mind was presenting what seemed like very compelling cases for why it should. The reason is that some connections are not subject to the same rules that govern ordinary relationships. Some connections are covenantal in nature. They exist as part of a larger agreement, made before either person involved had any conscious awareness of the other's existence. These are the connections that survive everything life throws at them, because they are rooted in something deeper than circumstance or convenience or compatibility. As important as all of those things are, they are rooted in divine purpose, in the idea that two souls agreed, at some level far beyond the surface of conscious decision-making, to find each other in this lifetime, and to do something together that neither could do alone. Your connection with this person is one of those. Heaven has confirmed it in the most tangible way possible, which is through the movement of their heart in your direction, and the courage with which they began to speak that movement into existence last night. The heavens do not move people toward empty destinations. The heavens do not put longing in a person's chest for something that is not meant to be theirs. The hunger your person has been feeling, the hunger that every substitute and every distraction has failed to satisfy. That hunger exists because there is something specific and real that it is designed to point them toward, and that thing is you. Not a version of you that they have romanticized or idealized you, real, whole, complex, beautiful person that you actually are, the one they have been afraid to fully reach for, because reaching requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires trust, and trust requires the kind of courage that can only be forged in the fire of enough pain. They have been in that fire. They have been in it long enough, and they have come out of it changed in the ways they needed to change. Not perfect. Heaven is not in the business of delivering perfect people, because perfect people do not exist. And the pursuit of them is one of the most effective lies that fear has ever used to keep human beings from receiving the love that is actually available to them. But changed, genuinely, substantially and permanently changed. Changed in the direction of you. Changed in the direction of honesty and vulnerability and the willingness to stop letting pride write the story of their life. Changed in the direction of a love that does not hedge its or keep one foot outside the door, or protect itself at the expense of the connection it claims to value. While all of this has been unfolding in their inner world, you have been doing your own work, even if you did not always recognize it as such. Every morning you chose to get up and continue living fully. Despite the ache in your chest was a spiritual practice. Every moment you chose to trust the process, even when the process made no visible sense, was an act of profound faith. Every time you resisted the urge to collapse into bitterness, and instead chose to remain open, to remain soft, to remain the kind of person who believes that love is real, and worthy of the risk it requires. You were doing something that matters enormously in the economy of the spirit. You were maintaining the frequency. You were staying in alignment with what you are calling in. You were proving, in the laboratory of daily life, that you have the capacity to hold this love with the kind of grace and steadiness that it deserves. That is not a small thing. That is not an easy thing. There are people who, faced with the kind of silence and uncertainty you have navigated, close down permanently. They decide that the risk is too great, and the potential for pain too high, and they build walls that keep everything out, including the very love they are desperate for. You did not do that. You stayed open. You kept your heart available even when keeping it available cost you something every single day. Heaven has seen that, and heaven is not in the habit of letting genuine faith and genuine love go unrewarded indefinitely. The reward is coming. It has already begun arriving in the spiritual realm, and the physical world, which always follows the spiritual world's lead eventually, is about to catch up. There are people in your life right now, people who know your situation, and know how long you have been in this season of waiting, who may counsel you toward caution. They care about you, and their concern comes from a good place, from the place of wanting to protect you from being hurt again. They have watched you go through this, and they have felt protective of you, in the way that people who love us feel protective, when they perceive that we are vulnerable. Listen to their love. Receive their concern, and also hold in your deepest, knowing the truth that what is happening right now is different. Not because your hope is louder this time, or because the longing is stronger, but because the movement is real, and it is happening from their side, not yours. You are not chasing, you are not projecting, you are not constructing a narrative from the raw material of wishful thinking. Something actually happened last night. Something shifted. Something broke open, and the people who love you will see it too. When the evidence arrives in the physical world, to match what has already been confirmed in the spiritual one. For now, your job is simpler than it might feel in this moment. Your job is to remain in the high frequency of someone who knows that what they have been waiting for is on its way. That means protecting your peace fiercely. It means not allowing anxiety about the timing or the mechanics of how this reunion will happen to pull you out of the state of trust and openness that you have worked so hard to maintain. It means treating yourself with the same tenderness and care that you would want to be treated with by someone who loves you deeply, because the way you treat yourself in this season sets the energetic template for the kind of love you are about to receive. It means continuing to show up fully in your own life, continuing to invest in your own joy, your own growth, your own becoming, not as a strategy to attract something, but because you are a whole person whose life is worth living richly, regardless of what is happening or not happening in the romantic dimension. And it means being ready, not in a nervous, vigilant, hyper-aware way that keeps you perpetually on edge, anticipating when and how they will appear, but in the way that someone who has prepared a beautiful table for a guest is ready. The preparation is done, the space is created, the welcome is genuine and warm and waiting. You do not stand at the window watching anxiously for them to arrive. You go about the beautiful business of your life, and when they arrive, you open the door with a full and gracious heart, because you always knew, even in the moments when it was hardest to hold on to, that they were coming. What God has joined together, no amount of distance, time, fear, pride, silence, outside interference, or human stubbornness can keep apart permanently. You have lived through the permanently part. You have survived the season of separation, and you have come through it with your heart still open, and your faith still intact, and your love still genuine and undiminished by everything it has been through. That is extraordinary. That is the kind of love that heaven takes seriously. And because heaven has taken it seriously, because heaven has been working on both sides of this equation, in ways that you are only now beginning to see the evidence of, the outcome is secure. Your special person spoke last night. They spoke the truth that they have been carrying in the most vulnerable and secret chamber of their heart. They spoke it to their people, and in doing so, they spoke it to the universe, and the universe has received it as the declaration that it is. The next step in this divine sequence is the conversation that brings it to you directly, the moment when they stand before you, with all of their realized truth, and their genuine repentance, and their unshakable certainty about who you are to them, and what they are choosing. That moment is not far away. It is being prepared even now in the invisible realm. It is approaching with all the inevitability of a sunrise, quiet and certain and completely unstoppable. Do not give up now. You are standing on the threshold of the very thing you have been praying for. Your special person's confession last night was not the end of anything. It was the opening act of a reunion that the heavens have been preparing since, before either of you knew you needed it. The love you carry for them has not been in vain. The prayers you prayed in the dark have not gone unheard. The tears you cried in your most honest and private moments have not fallen without purpose. Everything you have been through, every single piece of this journey, has been carrying you to this moment, and to the moments that are about to unfold from it. This is your season of harvest. This is the moment where the invisible becomes visible, where the spiritual breaks through into the physical, where the love that has always been real between you finally gets to be expressed and received and built upon, without the shadows of fear or pride or unreadiness dimming it. This is where your story takes the turn that you have been sensing was coming, even in the moments when you could not see any evidence of it. This is where heaven delivers on the promise that was made to your soul long before the separation began, the promise that real love, properly rooted and divinely guided, does not ultimately fail. Your special person is coming back to you with everything they have. They are coming back as someone who has been to the far country and discovered that everything worth having was always with you. They are coming back as someone who has been in the wilderness, long enough to know what they are walking toward, and why, and to have chosen it not out of desperation, but out of the clearest-eyed, most honest recognition of truth that they have ever experienced in their life. They are coming back as someone who is ready, truly and completely ready, to be the person you deserve to be loved by, and you, having held the faith through the hardest season, are ready to receive them. The victory is here. The whisper from heaven, that has been sustaining you through the long silence, is growing louder, taking shape, preparing to become a shout of joy and reunion, and all the beautiful ordinary extraordinary things that come from two people who are finally, fully, and irreversibly choosing each other. Trust what is happening. Trust what you feel in the deepest place, where you have always known the truth of this connection. Trust heaven's timing, which has proven itself to be more careful and more loving than anything you could have designed on your own. And get ready. Because what is coming for you now is the love you always deserved, finally walking through the door, and home to you for good.